Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into a topic today that I think you'll find really fascinating. It's something that I've always been curious about myself. We're talking about how animals talk to each other.
Oh, it's definitely a topic that captures the imagination, doesn't it? I mean, think about it. Animals talking.
Right. And we're not just talking about the obvious stuff like barking dogs or chirping birds. We're going deeper into the secret languages of the animal world.
Exactly. It's like a whole hidden world of communication is going on all around us, and we're just starting to understand the tip of the iceberg, really.
And the amazing thing is just how diverse these languages are. We're going to look at 10 examples today, each one weirder and more wonderful than the last. From dancing bees to elephants that communicate with, get this, rumbles they make that are too low for us to even hear.
It really challenges our human-centric view of communication, doesn't it? We tend to think of language as this uniquely human thing, but the more we learn about the animal kingdom, the more we realize how limited that view really is.
So, are you ready to have your mind blown? Because I think we're about to go on a wild ride.
Let's do it. I'm excited to share some of these amazing examples.
All right, let's start with something that a lot of people have probably heard of, at least in passing, the honeybee waggle dance. It's not just some random bee boogie, is it?
Not at all. It's a surprisingly complex way for bees to tell their hive mates where to find good food. It's like their version of Google Maps, but encoded in a dance. Imagine that.
Okay, I'm trying to wrap my head around that. How does a dance tell another bee, hey, fly 2 miles southeast and you'll find the good nectar?
Well, picture this. A bee returns to the hive after finding a field full of delicious flowers. So this bee, it starts doing this figure 8 dance on the honeycomb, and the angle of the middle part of the 8, the straight part, relative to the sun, tells the other bees the direction to fly.
That's incredible. So the bee is basically using the sun as a compass.
Precisely. And that's not all. The longer the bee waggles its abdomen during that straight run, the farther away the food is. It's like saying, it's a long flight, but trust me, it's worth it.
So it's not just direction, it's distance too.
Yeah.
Wow. I always wondered about this, actually. What happens when the sun moves throughout the day? Do the bees adjust their dances? Because wouldn't that mess up the directions?
You're absolutely right. The sun's position changes throughout the day, and the bees have to account for that. And you know what? They do. They constantly recalibrate their dances to keep the directions accurate.
That's amazing. So they're not just using geometry, they're also using astronomy.
Exactly. Their internal compass is linked to this celestial clock. It's like they have this internal clock that's keeping track of the sun's movement. It's truly mind-blowing when you think about it.
Bees are basically tiny mathematicians and astronomers, and they're using all that brain power just to find lunch. I'm seriously impressed.
It makes you appreciate how much we still have to learn about the intelligence of even the smallest creatures, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on from those brilliant bees to another animal that's known for its intelligence. Elephants.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they're famous for their trumpeting calls, but I hear there's a whole secret conversation going on that we humans are totally missing out on.
Ah, you're talking about infrasound. Those low-frequency rumbles that elephants use that are, well, they're too low for our ears to pick up. But for elephants, those sounds can travel for miles, even through the ground, which is pretty cool when you think about it.
That's crazy. So it's like they have their own private communication channel that we can't even access. So what are they saying to each other with these secret rumbles? Is it just like, hey, nice day for a walk or something?
It's probably a bit more complex than that. Remember, elephants are very social animals, and they have these huge home ranges. So these infrasound calls are really important for keeping in touch with each other, especially when they're miles apart.
It's like a long-distance phone call for elephants.
You could think of it that way. It allows them to stay connected to their families and their social groups, even when they're not physically together.
I also read somewhere that young male elephants might use infrasound to challenge a dominant male. Is that true?
That's a great question, and it's something that researchers are still trying to understand. There seems to be a whole hierarchy within elephant society that's communicated through these rumbles. It's like a constant conversation about who's in charge and who's looking for a chance to move up the ranks, maybe challenge the leader.
It's like an elephant soap opera playing out in slow motion, and we can't even hear it.
It really makes you realize how much we still don't know about the sensory worlds of other animals, doesn't it? We're so focused on what we can perceive that we often miss out on these whole other layers of communication that are happening all around us. It's kind of humbling.
All right, let's shift gears from these rumbling giants to something a little more, well, sparkly. What about fireflies? I always loved catching them as a kid, but I never knew that their light show was actually a complex form of communication.
It's definitely more than just a pretty light show. It's like their own version of Morse code, but for love. Each firefly species has its own unique flashing pattern, and the males use it to attract females.
So it's not just about who can put on the flashiest display. It's about finding a partner who speaks the same light language.
Exactly. It's all about finding the right match. Imagine a firefly flashing its heart out only to attract, like, a moth who's looking for a completely different kind of signal. Talk about awkward.
It'd be a dating disaster. I guess that's why those species-specific signals are so important. No mixed signals there.
Hmm.
So fireflies use light for their love songs. But what about those animals known for their vocal talent? Let's talk prairie dogs. They might look cute and cuddly, but I hear they have a surprisingly sophisticated vocabulary. Way more than you'd expect.
Oh, absolutely. Those chirps and barks aren't just random noise. Prairie dogs use them to share incredibly detailed information about predators, especially those lurking around their burrows.
So it's like their own little neighborhood watch system.
That's a great way to put it. But instead of just yelling danger, they can actually convey specific information about the type of predator, its size, color, even how fast it's approaching. They really give detailed reports, which I find really incredible.
Wait, so they have different calls for, say, a hawk versus the coyote, like incoming hawk, everyone watch the skies, or coyote alert, head for the burrows.
You got it. Researchers have actually identified specific words in their calls that correspond to different types of predators.
That's insane. I'm starting to see a pattern here. It seems like communication in the animal kingdom is often tied to survival, staying alive and well-fed.
You're right on the money. When you think about it, communication often boils down to conveying information that's crucial for survival and reproduction. And in the wild, well, the stakes are pretty high. You got to get it right, or it could be game over.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's talk about some masters of disguise now. Cephalopods. We're talking cuttlefish, squid, octopuses, all those amazing creatures that can change color and pattern faster than you can blink. I'm always mesmerized by that.
It's truly mind-boggling, isn't it? And here's the thing. They're not just blending in. They're actually using those color changes to communicate a whole range of messages.
So it's not just camouflage. There's actual conversation happening through those color shifts.
Absolutely. It's like their skin is a canvas for visual conversation. They can use it to attract mates, intimidate rivals, warn off predators, you name it. It's like a whole language written in color and patterns.
So you're telling me a male cuttlefish might flash a certain pattern to impress a female.
Oh, absolutely. They'll put on quite the show, trying to outshine their rivals. It's like a visual dance-off underwater.
That's incredible. I'm picturing it now, all these flashing colors, changing patterns. It's like a disco under the sea.
I love that analogy. It really captures the vibrancy and complexity of their communication. It's not just about blending in, it's about standing out, expressing themselves, and connecting with each other. It's really quite beautiful when you think about it.
Okay, I'm definitely adding cephalopod disco to my bucket list.
Now let's move on to an animal whose communication is as haunting as it is beautiful. The wolf. Those howls echoing through the forest. It's a sound that sends chills down your spine, but it's more than just a spooky sound, right?
You're absolutely right. Wolf howls are an incredibly important form of communication for these social creatures. They use them for a whole bunch of things. Communicating their location, strengthening pack bonds, coordinating hunting efforts, even signaling alarm. It's like their own form of long-distance communication.
I've heard that each wolf actually has its own unique howl, almost like a fingerprint. Is that true?
That's exactly right. And just like fingerprints, no two are alike. This helps them recognize each other even when they're far apart. And the way they howl together with different wolves joining in and harmonizing, it really reveals a lot about the pack's dynamics.
It's like listening in on a family conversation, except the family is a pack of wolves with their own distinct voices and ways of interacting. It's a perfect analogy. And just like with human families, communication is key to keeping the group strong and successful.
Okay, we've covered some amazing ground so far, from dancing bees to rumbling elephants, flashing fireflies, chattering prairie dogs, and color-changing cephalopods. I'm already mind-blown.
And we're not even done yet. There are still so many amazing examples of animal communication to explore, from the chemical trails of ants to the incredible vocal duets of gibbons. Get ready for even more surprises.
I can't wait. We'll pick up where we left off in part 2 of our deep dive. Until then, keep those ears open and keep those minds curious. Welcome back to our deep dive into the secret languages of the animal kingdom. We've already covered some pretty amazing examples, but, well, we're just getting started, really.
There's so much more to explore. The diversity of animal communication is just astounding, isn't it?
It really is. Okay, let's pick up where we left off. We were talking about those incredible social insects, and I always see them marching in these perfect lines, and, oh, I have to wonder, how do they do that? How do they coordinate all those movements? It's like they have some kind of hive mind or something.
Well, it's not quite a hive mind, but they are using a form of communication that's totally invisible to us. They use chemical trails. Ants release these things called pheromones, which are basically scent signals to communicate with each other.
So it's like a silent language, but instead of words, it's scent.
Exactly. And what's amazing is that different pheromones convey different messages. For example, a trail pheromone might be saying, hey, follow me to this awesome food source, while an alarm pheromone might be like, danger, everyone scatter.
So if I'm following you, each ant is basically leaving this little scent trail that other ants can follow. Sort of like leaving breadcrumbs, but, with chemicals.
That's a great way to put it. And what's even cooler is that different ant species have their own unique pheromone vocabularies. It's like each species speaks its own chemical language.
That's mind-blowing. I always thought ants were just following simple instincts.
It just goes to show you how much complexity there is in the natural world, even in creatures we might think of as simple. Their communication system is just as effective as our signs and symbols, maybe even more so in its own way. Pretty amazing, right?
Absolutely. Okay, let's switch gears and talk about some of those amazing acrobatic apes. Gibbons, they're famous for their vocal duets, which, well, they're not just some random jungle karaoke, are they?
Not at all. Gibbon duets are these elaborate vocal displays that involve both males and females singing together. And when I say singing, I mean it. It's like they're composing a symphony together. Really beautiful stuff.
I've heard recordings of Gibbon duets, and they are incredible. But I've always wondered, what's the purpose? Is it just for bonding, for fun?
It's definitely about bonding, strengthening that pair bond between mates. But it's also about territory. They're basically telling other gibbons in the area, hey, this is our turf, stay out.
So it's like a love song and a warning, all in one. I read that the females part of the duet is especially important.
That's right. The females' vocalizations are key for establishing and defending their territory. In fact, some studies suggest that females are often more aggressive than males when it comes to territorial defense. So those beautiful duets are backed up by some serious girl power.
I love that. Okay, get ready for this next one. This one involves fish and, believe it or not, electricity.
It might sound strange, but some fish have actually evolved to communicate using electric fields. It's a completely different way of experiencing the world, one that we humans can barely even imagine.
I'm all ears, but I got to be honest. I have no idea how fish could possibly talk using electricity.
So imagine you could sense the world not just through sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch, but also through the sixth sense that detects electrical fields. That's what these fish do. They have special organs that allow them to both generate and detect weak electrical signals.
So they're sending out electrical pulses, but how do they turn those pulses into a message? It's not like they're sending Morse code, right?
You might be surprised, these electrical signals can carry information about all sorts of things. Species, sex, social status, even individual identity. It's like an electrical fingerprint.
Wow. I can't even begin to imagine what that sensory experience would be like.
It's truly remarkable. It's like a hidden world of communication that's going on all around us.
Okay, officially mind blown. Speaking of things that blow my mind, let's talk about birdsong. I mean, we all love to hear birds singing. But did you know that birds can have regional dialects, just like humans?
Isn't that fascinating? Birds don't just hatch knowing their songs. They learn them. And just like with humans, the way they learn is by listening to and imitating the birds around them. So over time, different populations of birds develop slightly different versions of the same song, kind of like regional accents.
So if I were a bird watcher traveling across the country, I might hear different accents in the songs of the same species. That's so cool.
Exactly. And those dialects can be incredibly subtle or really obvious depending on the species.
So it's not just about attracting mates then, it's also a way for birds to identify others from their own region.
It's probably a combination of factors. Dialects might help birds recognize potential mates who share their local traditions, or they might play a role in territorial defense by helping them distinguish neighbors from strangers.
Wow, I never knew there was so much to birdsong. The more we delve into animal communication, the more I'm realizing how much it reflects our own human experiences with languages, dialects, social cues. It's like they're mirroring us in their own unique ways.
I think that's a really insightful observation. It highlights the interconnectedness of life on Earth, doesn't it? We may be different species, but we share many of the same fundamental challenges when it comes to communicating and navigating our social worlds. It's really quite beautiful.
Okay, we've journeyed from the silent language of ants to the melodic dialects of birds, but there's one final example we have to explore. A creature known for its intelligence and complex social interactions. And this time, I'm not talking about humans.
You must be talking about dolphins. They've captivated humans for centuries with their intelligence and playful nature, and their communication is equally fascinating. They really are special creatures.
Dolphins, of course. They're famous for their whistles and clicks, but is there more to it than that? It's almost like they have their own language.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Do dolphins have language in the same way humans do? We don't have a definitive answer yet, but the evidence suggests that dolphin communication is incredibly complex. They use a wide range of sounds, whistles, clicks, pulse calls, you name it. And they use them to convey information about food, danger, social interactions. It's really quite sophisticated.
So what are they talking about with all those clicks and whistles? Are they sharing stories, gossiping about their neighbors, planning their next fishing expedition?
We're just starting to scratch the surface of dolphin communication, but we know they use vocalizations to identify individuals, strengthen their social bonds, coordinate group activities, and navigate their world. And, some researchers even believe that dolphins might be capable of abstract thought and emotional expression. Wouldn't that be amazing?
That would be incredible. Imagine being able to eavesdrop on a dolphin conversation. What secrets would we unlock about their lives, their intelligence? It's like a whole other world just waiting to be discovered.
And with all the advances in technology and our understanding of animal cognition, who knows, maybe one day we will be able to have a conversation with these amazing creatures. That's a really exciting thought, isn't it?
It really is. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in our deep dive, from the silent world of ants to the potential complexities of dolphin communication. But before we wrap things up, I have to ask, what are the key takeaways from all of these examples? What can we, as humans, learn from the way animals communicate?
I think one of the biggest takeaways is that communication is fundamental to life on Earth. Every living thing, from the tiniest insect to the largest whale, has evolved these incredible ways to connect with each other and navigate their world. And it's not just about basic survival either. We've seen examples of animal communication that are incredibly complex and sophisticated, conveying information about threats, opportunities, social dynamics. There's so much more to it than we might think.
It really challenges our human-centric view of intelligence, doesn't it? We tend to think that our way of communicating is the most advanced. But these examples show us that intelligence takes many forms, and there's still so much we can learn from the diversity and ingenuity of animal communication.
Absolutely. It's a humbling reminder that we're not the only intelligent beings on this planet. And by studying animal communication, we can gain a deeper understanding of not only the animal world, but also ourselves.
Well, this deep dive has definitely opened my eyes to the wonders of animal communication. But we're not quite done yet. In part 3, we'll wrap things up and explore some of the broader implications of what we've learned. So stay tuned. And we're back for our final look into the amazing ways animals communicate. I don't know about you, but this whole journey has really changed how I see the natural world.
Me too. I mean, we've only just scratched the surface, really. There's so much more to discover. It makes you realize how much we still don't understand.
I'm finding myself listening more closely to all the sounds around me now, trying to figure out, what the birds are saying to each other, what the squirrels are chattering about. It's like a whole secret world has opened up.
It really is. And the more we learn, the more amazing it becomes. At the beginning, we talked about some key takeaways from all these examples. What can we as humans learn from the way animals communicate?
I think one thing that really stands out to me is just how intentional animals are when they communicate. They're not wasting time with chit-chat or small talk. Every sound, every gesture, every scent has a purpose. They're really focused.
It's true. They've evolved to be incredibly efficient communicators, which, well, it makes you think about how often we humans, we don't always communicate that effectively, do we?
We could definitely learn a thing or two from them. Maybe, be more present in our conversations, really listen to what others are saying, choose our words carefully, be more mindful, I guess.
Absolutely. Another thing that's always impressed me is how tuned in animals are to their surroundings. They're constantly picking up on these subtle cues that we might completely miss.
They have to be. It's a matter of survival for them.
Right, exactly. Whether it's a change in the wind or a rustle in the leaves, they're always paying attention. gathering information from their environment. It's amazing to think about.
It makes me wonder if maybe we're losing some of that sensitivity, as we become more reliant on technology and less connected to nature.
It's a valid concern. We're spending more and more time indoors looking at screens. Maybe we need to make more of an effort to, reconnect with the natural world, reawaken those senses.
Yeah, like go for a walk in the woods without our phones. Just listen to the sounds, feel the breeze, smell the earth.
Yeah.
Actually pay attention to what's going on around us.
I love that idea. There's a whole world of sensory experience out there just waiting to be rediscovered. Who knows what we might find?
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the incredible world of animal communication. What a journey it's been. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and insights with us.
It's been a pleasure. I hope our listeners have enjoyed learning about these fascinating creatures and their amazing ways of communicating.
I know I have. It's really changed how I see the world. And, who knows, maybe it's even inspired a few folks to go out and do some exploring of their own.
To listen a little more closely, to pay attention to the subtle whispers of the natural world.
Exactly, because you never know what secrets you might uncover. Until next time, keep those ears open, those minds curious, and remember, the world is full of hidden conversations, just waiting to be heard.